Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns star pass rusher. Could he be on the verge of winning his second Defensive Player of the Year award?
It's definitely within the realm of possibility. He's having a statistically phenomenal year, and that's despite the Browns facing a pretty tough season.
Absolutely. He's currently leading the league in sacks, sitting at 14, and he's already hit a career high in tackles for loss with 21.
Those are some impressive numbers. And his coach, Kevin Stefanski, seems to agree.
He does, doesn't he?
Oh.
Stefanski's been pretty vocal, even going on record saying Garrett's the best defensive player in the league, and that there's absolutely no reason why he shouldn't win the award again.
Strong words from the coach. But do you think those kinds of endorsements from coaches actually sway the voters?
That's a good question. They'll probably bring a bit more attention to the player.
I would agree with that.
But I'm not sure if it's really a deciding factor in the voting.
It's doubtful. Voters tend to zero in on the stats themselves.
Definitely. And the overall impact a player has on the game.
Precisely. But on that note, Garrett's 2024 season, statistically, it's pretty much on par with his 2023 performance the year he won the award.
And he's even surpassed some of his previous numbers.
He has. So he's definitely making a case for himself. But is there any kind of precedent for a player winning the award 2 years in a row?
It doesn't happen very often.
That's true. Voters often lean towards recognizing new standout performers. Do you think that could affect Garrett's chances?
Maybe. I think he'll need to deliver a performance that's so undeniably dominant that voters have no choice but to make him the front runner. How do you think his situation compares to other potential candidates like TJ Watt, for example?
Well, Watt has a bit of an advantage.
How so?
He's playing on a team with a stronger defensive line in Pittsburgh.
That's a good point. And that raises a whole other set of questions.
Like how individual performance gets measured when a player's got strong support from their teammates.
Exactly. Could that actually create a bias in the voting process?
It's a possibility.
So how do we even begin to accurately assess a player's impact?
Especially when they're carrying a heavier load.
Compared to someone who's got a more robust supporting cast, right?
It's a complex issue. Voters have to really dissect a player's contribution.
You mean look beyond just the raw numbers?
Yes, and understand the context of each play. See how it fits within the overall defensive scheme.
So there's a big difference between a player who's racking up stats because of the strong defensive line and a player who's consistently generating pressure and creating opportunities despite facing double and triple teams.
A huge difference.
Well, this final week of the season is going to be crucial for Garrett. How much do you think this final performance will factor into the voters' decisions?
This last game is a big opportunity for him.
You mean to really solidify his case?
Yes, leave a strong final impression on those voters. And it's not just about adding more stats to his record. It's about showcasing that undeniable dominance.
You know, with his competitive spirit and his history of excelling under pressure, I think he's definitely capable of delivering a statement performance. But how much weight do you think voters will actually give to his ability to lift his team, especially considering their struggles this season?
Now, that is a very interesting question. It really makes you think about what the Defensive Player of the Year award truly stands for.
Are they looking for individual brilliance, or are they looking for a player who's a part of a winning team?
That's a tough call. Do you think Garrett's individual success against the backdrop of the Browns' struggles this season could actually work in his favor?
It could make for a compelling narrative for some voters. They might see it as a testament to his resilience, his ability to shine, even when surrounded by adversity.
The lone warrior battling against the odds, carrying his team on his shoulders.
Right. But then on the other hand, some voters might see his individual success as less meaningful because the team as a whole isn't performing well.
Two very different perspectives.
So how do we reconcile these two contrasting viewpoints?
Yeah.
How much does a team's success actually factor into the evaluation of an individual player?
It's a complex issue, and honestly, it probably comes down to the individual voter and what their priorities are. Some voters might prioritize individual achievement,
while others prioritize team success.
Exactly. There isn't really a right or wrong answer there.
It probably varies from person to person.
It likely does. Do you ever worry about an unconscious bias creeping into the voting process?
You mean a bias towards players on winning teams?
Precisely.
It's definitely a valid concern. I mean, is it really possible to be completely objective when you're evaluating an individual player?
Especially when you're factoring in their team's overall record?
It's hard to completely separate those things, I think. It's human nature to be influenced by context, and a team's performance can easily become part of that context.
It certainly certainly can. So then how can we be sure that a player like Garrett is being evaluated fairly?
A player who's delivering these exceptional results despite his team's challenges.
It demands a conscious effort from the voters.
To set aside the team's performance and really zero in on the individual.
They need to understand the player's role within the defensive scheme and also recognize the specific challenges they've had to overcome.
We can't pretend the Browns haven't had a tough season.
No, we can't. But that shouldn't detract from Garrett's performance. He's been a force to be reckoned with on the field week after week.
The stats don't lie.
They don't. He's leading the league in both sacks and tackles for loss.
And the eye test backs it up too.
Oh, absolutely. When you watch Garrett play, you see a relentless, disruptive presence on the field. A true game changer.
Someone who can single-handedly shift the momentum of the entire game.
And that's what separates the truly great players from the good ones.
The ability to make those impactful plays.
And Garrett consistently delivers those moments of brilliance.
But the question remains, will the voters recognize that individual brilliance, even in the context of the Browns' struggles this season?
That's what we're all waiting to see.
It highlights the incredible depth of talent in the league this year.
And the incredibly competitive nature of the NFL.
We've got multiple players who deserve to be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year.
It's a great reminder that even in a team sport, individual brilliance can shine through.
And sometimes that individual brilliance comes in the form of a truly dominant defensive force.
Someone like Myles Garrett, instilling fear in the hearts of quarterbacks, inspiring awe in fans.
Leaving his mark on every single game he plays.
Regardless of the outcome of the voting, Garrett's impact on the NFL is undeniable.
A generational talent.
And his story is still being written.
We'll definitely be watching to see what happens next. The voters certainly have a lot to consider. How do you think they'll weigh all the different factors when it comes to deciding on this year's Defensive Player of the Year?
I think it'll be fascinating to see what they prioritize, the individual stats, of course, but also a player's impact on the games, and even the narrative surrounding their season. It's a pretty complex evaluation process.
It is. They need to have a really strong grasp of all those elements.
Absolutely. So, given all that complexity, what's your prediction for the outcome? Do you think Garrett has done enough to earn back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards?
It's a tough call. I mean, his individual performance is definitely worthy of the recognition.
Without a doubt.
But then you've got other strong contenders out there.
And the potential for what some might call voter fatigue.
Exactly. So it's really anyone's guess at this point.
It is. We'll just have to wait and see what the voters decide.
It really speaks to the talent level in the league this year. The fact that we've got such a close race for this award.
It makes the final week of the season even more exciting.
It does. I can feel the anticipation building already. Everyone's eager to see who the voters will choose.
For the player who wins, it's a huge honor, a real culmination of all their hard work and dedication.
Absolutely. It really solidifies their status as one of the league's best defenders.
The Defensive Player of the Year award is a pretty big deal.
It is. It's a symbol of excellence.
A testament to a player's dominance on the field.
And for Garrett to win it 2 years in a row, that would cement his legacy as one of the most formidable defensive players we've seen in recent history.
It would be an incredible achievement.
Showing just how consistently he performs at the highest level.
No matter what happens with the voting, though, there's no denying the impact he's had on the game.
He's already made his mark on NFL history.
Every time he steps on the field, he's a threat.
Opposing offenses have to account for him on every play.
Quarterbacks fear him.
He's got that rare combination of speed, power, and technique.
Allowing him to disrupt plays time and time again.
Making those game-changing plays that we all love to see.
He's still a young player, too.
With so much potential ahead of him.
I think we can expect to see a lot more dominant performances from him in the future.
He seems to be on a path to true greatness.
It's been a pleasure diving into this discussion about Myles Garrett and his candidacy for Defensive Player of the Year.
It's been a fascinating look at what it takes to be considered one of the best defensive players in the NFL.